Dear viewers, welcome to Logos TV Coptic Civilization Program. I'm Saad, Michael Saad. Today's episode is entitled From Los Angeles to Bolivia and the World. We are honored and blessed by a group from Los Angeles who actually went to Bolivia, some of them more than once, and certain members of the group are here today, and it's a great blessing that the episode is hosting them, and they are led by Father Mina Ghebrial, priest at Christ the Redeemer Coptic Orthodox Church in Lakewood, California. Welcome, Father Mina, and welcome everyone.
Thank you so much for having us, Dr. Saad. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's an honor and pleasure and a blessing and benefit, edifying to myself and the program and the viewers to get to know the details and the goals and achievements of the trip that you led more than once to Bolivia and other locations. And please, if I may ask you to introduce yourself and the team who are with us today.
Thank you so much. Sure. Like you said, I serve at Christ the Redeemer Church, and that's in Lakewood, California. Been there for a few years now. My background is in medicine, and one of the highlights of the trip is that I got to practice a little bit of medicine while I was there, so that was a blessing for me. With us today is, in alphabetical order, Mr. Adel Hanna. He is a servant at St. Peter and St. Paul Church in Santa Monica. He is a retired engineer, and he has helped us immensely in organizing the trip and getting tickets. And he also went on a trip recently in December to St. Kitts in the Caribbean. So he was instrumental in that as well. Next is Dr. Christie Bolous. She attends St. Maurice Church in Pomona, and she serves in Sunday school, specifically the junior high girls. And she is a pharmacist and works full-time as an inpatient pharmacist. And she has been instrumental in helping us get medicine, actually, that we took with us to Bolivia. And she filed many applications so we can get medicines donated to us for free at a very low cost. So she spent countless hours doing that. So we really appreciate her service and her time. Next, we have Mr. Fawzy Girgis. He attends Christ the Redeemer Church, and he serves there, making the Urban for us several times a week. And he also serves as a deacon on occasion. He is a photographer and a videographer, and many of the videos that we will enjoy today, he took. And he is also famous for making amazing torshi. And one of the things that he did in Bolivia was he bought all the ingredients there and spent a day making torshi, and he left some for Sayyidina and for the priests there and for the servants there. And we got to enjoy some of it too, so that was a big blessing. Also, we have Dr. Mina Hakim. He is from St. Maurice and St. Mercurius and St. Abraham Church in Torrance. He is a practicing pediatrician, and he dedicated his time and spent much of the time with us seeing and treating many children who, in Bolivia that were in great need. So we really appreciate his time and effort as well. Last but not least is Miss Youstine Hanna, also known as Tuta, and she is a servant at St. Peter and St. Paul Church in Santa Monica. Uncle Adel is her dad, and she has a very big heart for the youth and loves to serve the youth and spends much time with them, helping them in whatever they need. By trade, she is a cybersecurity software engineer, and she has been a tremendous leader and an organizer for our mission trips.
Wow, this is an excellent group that we are blessed in this episode to host. And you went with a bigger group, right? About how many people were on the last trip to Bolivia, Abuna?
We went with 25 people total. And we could have gone with more, but that's the limit just because of the size of the bus there. Can't accommodate more than that because the bus takes us from everywhere, and then there's also servants from there that go with us. So, but this is just a small fraction of the people that are going. And sometimes we think we don't have anything to offer, but if you notice in the group that there's a big diversity, and engineers and medical people, and some people who have a long history in the service, some people who don't serve that much. But the beauty of it is that when we all go together, we are all able to serve in different capacities, and many talents come out that we didn't even realize. So yes, Dr. Saad, this is only a small portion of the bigger group, and there's so many other people that went and served, and we had the blessing of serving with them.
Thank you, Abul. It has been on my mind and amazement, why a priest in Los Angeles? You came from Egypt when you were about 11, 12 years old, right?
Yes.
And grew up here, went to medical school, practiced medicine, and then dedicated your life to the ministry as a priest. Why or what motivated you when you are serving a congregation here in Los Angeles County, Diocese of Los Angeles, to organize so far 2 trips to Bolivia? What motivated you? What were you trying to achieve?
Thank you, Dr. Saad. That's a very good question. I think personally for me, I feel like we do a great job in the church and in our communities to take care of ourselves in terms of attending church, even Sunday school, having even trips for the kids and things like that. But I feel like one of the biggest areas that we don't pay attention to is the service outside of our walls. And one of the beautiful things that we try to do at Christ the Redeemer Church is to really go outside of our walls and to serve the areas and the communities around us. And I really learned this from my fellow servants working at Christ the Redeemer Church, and how we partner up with other organizations and go out and have Thanksgiving dinner for people not from our church. We go out and sing songs and be with people in different areas that are outside of our church. So I feel like I've always felt like this ought to be part of our service in the church, and I think this comes from what our Lord Jesus Christ taught us Himself. In Mark 13:10, it says Christ Himself says, "And the gospel must first be preached to all the nations." So there is the key word here is must, and the other key word here is all the nations. So we have to carry the gospel to all the nations. And one of the things I was kind of meditating on recently is just how many non-Christians are in the world. And if we take the whole globe and look at the whole globe, it turns out that us Christians, regardless of our denomination, only make up a third of the population. So if you take the 8 billion people, 2/3 of those people are not Christians, don't know Christ, don't follow Christ, don't believe in Christ. So then the question to us becomes, what then? What happens to them? Are we to allow them to go to perdition? And of course, this is the fire, I think, that burns in a lot of us servants, is that we want as many people to be with Christ, and we cannot be satisfied with just serving ourselves and even serving just our own. But we have to carry the gospel beyond our walls, outside of our walls. And this has, benefit to us as well, because we get to see the hand of God working in other people, and we get to see their lives change, and we get to see them, becoming His children, and maybe they will affect others, and they will bring others to Him as well. And it also benefits us in our own spiritual life, in that we draw closer to Him. And when we go in a group like this to Bolivia and other places, the bonding and the family like connections that we form with each other, I think lasts a lifetime. And I think these are all the beauties that drive me and that motivate me to do this kind of service and to organize even more trips.
Indeed. That's I am actually jealous of all of you for doing this few time in Bolivia and other countries, and I wish I can join the next trip. And when we started the episode today, we showed video of baptism procession, and that ended in the picture behind me of His Grace Bishop Youssef, who has been the founder of the church in Bolivia, and for almost 22 years now serving there as a monk and then as a bishop. And God blessed his labor of love. And as we see in the picture behind me, these are the group that you watched their baptism or participated, Abuna, in their baptism. And there was a procession that we showed at the beginning of the program. Youstine, if I may start in reverse alphabetical order with Youstine. You attended this baptism or watch it, whichever. What's your impression and tell us also what motivated you to go in the first place, and then your observation of this baptism, please.
Yeah, so this was my second time going with Abuna Mina. I was motivated just because the people of Bolivia truly are very loving, and they really did touch my heart, and I was very blessed and honored to have seen Christ's work and Christ's love firsthand, and I wanted to go again, and I am planning on going again. But the baptism was truly very moving for me because I had never attended a baptism where we had the amount of people that you see behind you. So it was very touching. For me personally, it was also nice because some of the little kids that you see behind you, I was there carrying them and you know, praying the prayers of the baptism with Sayyidina and Abuna, and so it felt very special that I got to be a part of that and introduce more of our brothers and sisters into our faith.
Wonderful, wonderful. We will watch now another video where we show His Grace Bishop Yusuf, and most important, by the end of that video is a carpenter's workshop that His Grace established there, which builds all woodwork needs in the several churches that they built already there, including the iconostasis behind me. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's exactly correct.
It's exactly correct. So watch at the end of the video that carpenter shop, and let us comment on it when we come back.
كل الخشب اللي انتم بتشوفوه في الكنائس اللي هو الوود، كل الايكونز والايكونوستاتيز والديسكس، كل الكلام ده معمول في اور كاربنتري. We have our carpentry everything، يعني معمول في الورشة دي، وبوليفي اللي عامله مش مصري، يعني مش واحد مصري، واحد بوليفي من هنا. يعني الايقونات اللي انتوا شفتوها ديت لسه مدام فاديه بتقول لي اكيد تصوير سوسن اللي رسمه اللي قلت لها فعلا، هو فعلا تصوير سوسن جت رسمت كل الايقونات ديت، وهي بتيجي على طول وهي محبه للخدمه جدا، بتخدم في اماكن كتيره جدا جدا، ومشهوره بفنها الحلو المتميز، يعني ربنا يعوضها. الحاجه الثانيه اللي عايز اقولها ان طبعا انتم من لوس انجلوس، نيافه الحبر الجليل انبا سرابيون ليه خدمات كتيره عندنا هنا هو، وبروجكت في اسمها ايه، ديفلوبمنت بروجكت في هنا للناس البسطاء، كذا مشروع ربنا يعوضه. في سانتا فيرينا طبعا بتساعد في بعض المشروعات، وانا فاكر يمكن اول مشروع كانت جت ميري ميخائيل بنت ابونا موريديوس وزوجة ابونا كرولوس، فدي كانت ماسكه كذا حاجه والخدمات وكذا حاجه، ولغايه دلوقتي برضه شغاله معانا، بتحب الخدمه هنا اهوت خالص يعني. وفي حاجات كتيره بنعمل قدها قريب هتتعمل يعني. اللي عايز اقوله ان ربنا التاريخ ده وهتشوف حاجات كلها والكنائس وعمل ربنا والحاجات المشروعات الكبيره وامتى ومفيش وما ينفعش وحاجات كتيرة قوي. الكلام ده كله لما نعمل بعد الوقت اللي انتوا هتخدموا فيه في بوليفيا من غير ما نقول حاجة، هيبقى you have the answer of all the questions you have. اوكي؟ نعيشتوا ولا لسه؟ تمام؟ نكمل التور؟ خلاص؟ انا هفتح لكم بس الهيكل. هي طبعا الكنيسة على قدنا طبعا مش كبيرة قوي يعني، لكن نشكر ربنا في طبعا سان سكول وفي جماعات الشباب وفي ميتنج وفي ميني اكتيفيتيز يعني. حد عنده اي سؤال بسرعه كده في اللي احنا قلناه؟ كل المباني ديت الكونستراكشن دي في الفيستور، يعني دي زي قلايه كده، يعني قلايه يعني في الدور دور زي سهل. وبرده هنا برده يعني الرحلات اللي بتيجي بيقعدوا هنا، ده اماكن، وفي الناحيه الثانيه برده فوق كده في اماكن ثانيه، بحيث الرحلات اللي بتيجي ساعات بيقعدوا جوه الكينج. في ناس بيروحوا الاوتيل وفي ناس بيقعدوا هنا. ده المكتب بتاعي، يعني ده السكن بتاعي، عايش هنا يعني. والاباء الرهبان والاباء عايشين ورا. ده الديبوزيت بتاع الكلينيك، يعني في حاجات عاملينه ديبوزيت. وكان المكتب بتاع الشاريتي، وي هاف تشاريتي في US، لكن في الوقت الحالي عاملينه بس مجرد ديبوزيت للميديكالز، لكن الشاريتي موجوده.
His Grace Bishop Yusuf did an amazing job, or let us say God Almighty wanted a Coptic church in Bolivia, and he has chosen a servant, like he has chosen Moses and Joshua and David and the apostles to achieve the mission that God wanted them to achieve. And His Grace Bishop Yusuf, Bishop of Bolivia, has been that recipient of that calling, and God worked with him to achieve this kind of miracles. Dear Abuna Mina, would you kindly tell us the story of the Coptic Church in Bolivia, and also a little about Bolivia as a country?
It'd be my pleasure. So from what I know, the service in Bolivia started out in the early 1990s with then Abuna Agathon Ambabola, who is now Amba Agathon, who serves in a country nearby Bolivia. He used to go and visit Bolivia every few months to serve the Egyptians that lived in Bolivia. And as time went, people there, they said, we want our own priest to serve us all the time. So he went and he told His Holiness Pope Shenouda this, and His Holiness chose then Abuna Yusuf, or who's now Amba Yusuf, from St. Paul Monastery by the Red Sea. And Sayyidina Amba Yusuf started to take some Spanish courses to get familiar with the service that he's going to undertake, and became more and more proficient in the Spanish language. He was then ordained a priest in October of 2000, and he traveled to Bolivia at the end of 2000, of December 14th in 2000, and he started to live there and serve the people there. The interesting thing is that by the time he made it to Bolivia, many of the families, the Egyptian families that were there, had left. They had moved either to the US or moved back to Egypt or dispersed elsewhere. So when he went, basically there was almost no families left, or just one family that was left. And even shortly after he arrived, they had to leave as well. So he was basically left with no Egyptians. So you can imagine how hard the service must have been. But nevertheless, he started to have services in a small house, and people were very curious because there was no Orthodox presence in Bolivia at all. So this was the very first Orthodox priest or Orthodox church to start. So they would ask him, like, why are you dressed like this? Why are you let your beard grow? What's Coptic? What's Orthodox? And he would explain, and that people would gather. And he actually showed us the house where he used to pray. And it was a very, very tiny house with a very, very small family room. And this is where he would have liturgies. And then eventually he would have like a small baptistry in this corner. And he would baptize people. And then they would come and and participate in the liturgy, and the service grew and grew until that house became full. So then they bought a piece of land that's not too far away from that house, which is where the current cathedral is. And then they started building a little bit at a time. And they once they finished the building the church, His Holiness Pope Shenouda went and consecrated the church, and then they started to add other service buildings to it, dorms, a kitchen, etc., etc. Currently, Bolivia has 8 service areas, and many of them have fully built churches, but some of them, as we will see, like Puerto Bush, doesn't have any church building, but there's regular services there. There is they have 4 daycares serving different economic levels, from the very poorest to the very richest. They have 1 school that goes up to 6th grade. And their big project is they have land that's about 2.5 acres, where they want to make a kind of a higher level school, which is like a high school. And this is their biggest thing. They also have a health clinic right next to the cathedral in the main city, La Cruz. And also they have other health clinics in some of the other churches as well. Just to give you a little bit of background of Bolivia, Bolivia is actually quite interesting. It's named after the person who freed Bolivia from the Spanish rule, and his name was Simon Bolivar. So they named the country after him. And this was in 1825, when it was liberated from the Spaniards. I don't know if you can see it in my photo here, but this is the flag of Bolivia, and it has 3 colors. The red is because of the blood that was shed for the liberation of Bolivia. The yellow in the middle is because of the different minerals that Bolivia has. It has one of the largest salt flats in the world. It measures 10,582 square kilometers. And it says that when there's water on the top of the salt flat, the surface is very reflective. So then you have those very iconic pictures of the sky and the scenery around it reflecting on the water. The green on the bottom is because of its very fertile ground. And when we went to Bolivia, we experienced this firsthand, where we ate some of the tastiest mangoes and some of the tastiest fruit ever. Fruits and plants grow there very readily. The people don't really have to do anything or much except to gather them. And this is a lot of the livelihood of the people there. They just go and pick the fruits, and then they take them to the market in the cities, and they sell them, and a lot of them can make a living that way. Thank you.
Yeah, 12 million people in Bolivia, and square kilometers, the area of Bolivia is about the size of Egypt, maybe a little bigger than Egypt. But it's also part of the Amazon River Valley, plus about 1/3 of the country is 3.5 kilometers above sea level, where the capital, Al Baz, is. It's just unusual country. So
if I may add one more thing, it's actually one of the highest countries in terms of altitude in all of South America. It's the highest in elevation, which we didn't feel it when we were there, but that's one of the known facts. And it's one of the only 2 landlocked countries in South America. The only other one is Paraguay.
Yeah, that's interesting terrain. Life on at such high altitude is much be very difficult on breathing, and so it's the ministry there may not be that easy for His Grace and the volunteers. If we show now a video of Abuna Mina speaking in the environment there, and behind him there will be the camera will go around activities in certain mission trips as a clinic where all members of the team from Los Angeles are serving there. And when we watch the video and come back, we'll reflect about it.
Hi everybody, my name is Father Mina Ghebrial, here in Bolivia, in an area outside of Santa Cruz in Bolivia, in a place called Puerto Bush. And as I'm sure you've seen from the surroundings, the area is not very developed, very just dirt roads and shacks for the homes. And we're here with a wonderful group of servants from California, the Diocese of Los Angeles and Hawaii. And we're here with 4 doctors and 2 pharmacists. Any of the youth. Together is 25 people, and Abuna Anastasi, St. Anthony is also with us, and we're here to offer 2 types of service. One of the service is a spiritual service where we teach the kids basic things about the church, the Lord's Prayer, what the sacraments are, who our Lord Jesus Christ is, some very basic things for them. We teach them the faith, and thank God through that kind of service, this village became kind of, they have many people who have been baptized, and there's a priest that comes here and prays liturgy with them on a regular basis. So this is one of the type of the service we're supporting, kind of the spiritual service here with our team. But the other part of the service is the medical service, where we have the doctors, internal medicine, family practice. Right behind me are the dentists. They have been, we've already had a similar service yesterday, and we're going to continue the service for the total of 10 days that we're here. And we take care of their basic medical needs. We have a pediatrician, we have a family practice doctor, we have a OBGYN doctor, and we have an internal medicine GI liver specialist. We brought with us a lot of medications, so the doctors examine them, they diagnose them, and then we actually are able to give the treatment right there on the spot, so they don't have to go anywhere. It's a very blessed service. We're very happy to be here. We are here because Amba Yusuf is allowing us to be here to serve, and we have the blessing of the service. And with your prayers, hopefully we'll be able to do more service and to do it in other places as well. Thank you.
This video tells a lot of things, that you can practice medicine in a village in Bolivia with minimal equipment, but with big heart. And definitely the participants in this episode have big hearts. And along with the rest of the group who went there, each one doing his own part of the mosaic or the orchestra to serve the Lord. As Christ has said, "Come to me, the blessed of my Father, because I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me water. I was sick and you visited me." So if visiting is rewarded in heaven, let alone healing, the service and ministry of healing, or at least giving a healing presence to those needy people in Bolivia and around the world. And please allow me to say a quick note that some people say, why don't we keep our volunteerism to villages of Egypt and not why bother to go to Bolivia? I'll come to that later, but a quick note here is that when Christ mentioned the parable of the Good Samaritan, he answered that question. It's a Good Samaritan serving the unrelated person, unrelated and not expecting a reward or something in return. So Christie, you have been serving in that clinic as a pharmacist. You took, as Abuna said, you took medicine and so on. Please reflect on the video we just watched, reflect on the clinic, reflect on your role and the role of other volunteers who went along with you from Los Angeles. Please, I'm so eager to know the details.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Saad. So I went to Bolivia. My first trip was in December 2021. I went with Abuna Mina, I went with Tita, and a lot of other people. And originally it started as just a service trip. We had no intentions of doing any type of medical work there, although we had taken few medicines to donate and, blood pressure machines, minor things. And then Mba Yusuf found out that, we had a big medical team. Half of our group was medical. So he said, no, we're gonna split service and medical. And so after our first church visit, on our second one, we ended up, doing a pop-up shop, and we did clinics, and we had some medicine to give out, and we started getting the ball rolling on that first trip. And then, we came back and we reflected on that trip and how much more we could have done had we known ahead of time that we needed to do a medical mission. So Abuna Mina came back and he was like, I'm going to go back in July. And I was like, okay, take me with you. Tuta said, take me with you. We're going to get a whole trip going. So we did, thank God. And it took a lot of preparation. So I was responsible for medications and retrieving all of that. I had help from Tuta, and I had help from another pharmacist, who really stepped in and helped me with the applications to the nonprofits for us to get big quantities of medications and supplies. We had a lot of donations from all around. The idea was huge. She's very vital to getting a lot of things organized with all of this as well. And we spent so much time preparing and getting everything in luggages, and thankfully through the airport, which was so stressful, to Bolivia was a miracle in and of itself. And then we got there. Tuta and I remember we spent maybe the whole first night just organizing all of the medications, making a list of everything that we had in order to prepare for all the different pop-up shops. And then as we went to each village has its own church. And we go and we have our clinics there. We had pharmacists, me and another person, and we had pediatricians, Abuna Mina and Mina. And then we had dentists, and, we all jumped in. We all had our own separate clinics. We had people that were not even in the medical field, and they were triaging. And we had runners, and we had, some nursing students that were up front checking vitals. It was a true pop-up clinic, and it was amazing. And then after, everybody would see their specific special. And we had, before I forget, OBGYN, and we had family medicine. I can't forget that. So we had a lot of different specialties, which was great. And then after everybody saw their specialty, they'd come visit me in the pharmacy, and we would get medications out to people, which was, it was so rewarding to see how happy people were when they came and saw us. I truly feel like we benefited definitely more than they benefited, because you come back and you just recognize how much you have and how much you have to offer. And, that you shouldn't ever hold back on what you have to offer. There's so many stories. I can go in depth about all the people that we've come across, but I'm going to let Mina and Abuna and everybody have a turn to tell their stories. But before I give it over, there's one specific story that, really touches my heart, and it has nothing to do with medicine. On our first trip, as Abuna had mentioned, Sayyidina has an orphanage there for all the children that are found and the government wants to find a place for them. And this particular little baby boy was found on our first trip, maybe 2 or 3 days before we were about to leave. And we got to name him. So we named him Thomas after Abuna Abram. He serves at St. Thomas here in California. And he was on our first trip. So we named him after the church, Thomas. And all the kids get Sayyidina's name as their last name. So his name is Thomas Yusuf. And we got to see him come to the orphanage on the first trip. And Sayyidina didn't baptize him until we came back on the second trip. So that was very rewarding to see how he grew, how, you know, he's growing into the faith. It was very touching. And it showed continuity of the trip and the people and our relationships that we've built. So it was so nice to see that on our second trip. But without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Mina to tell you more stories about the clinics.
Hello, everybody. I had the blessing of joining the second trip that was in July with the group. This trip was a little bit more organized than the first one, and we got prepared. Before we even went there, the work started before we even got to Bolivia. So there was a lot of work for Christie and the pharmacists to gather the supplies, gather medicine. We had medicines for blood pressure, for diabetes, for infections. And we had a large amount of medicine. Then we had vitalings, and we were prepared for basically a mini clinic urgent care. So we had bags and bags and bags of supplies. We had one big night where we gathered in CTR with Abuna Mina, and we split up all of the supplies, and God was with us the whole time. We were very nervous going through the airport because we have a lot of medications with us. But God was with us, and Amba Yusuf came and he allowed us to proceed through the airport. So even before we were in Bolivia, God was with us. Once we reached Bolivia, the work started even before we went and saw patients. So we would stay up most of the night, splitting up the supplies to what clinic we're doing the next day, splitting up the medications. We had a full clinic, so we had dental, we had OBGYN, we had internal medicine, and we had pediatrics. And after we would split up all the medications and get ready for the next day, we would get all the bags, put them on the microbus, and we would travel anywhere from La Paz or where the cathedral is, anywhere from about an hour to 2 hours. And we had the blessing of Amba Yusuf being with us the entire time and telling us all the amazing stories and how everything started and how just the miracles that happened in Bolivia. And as Christie said, you know, the medical mission itself was a small part of the story. The bigger part was the miracles that were happening. Amba Yusuf just went there with nothing, as Abuna Mina was saying earlier, and he just served. That's all he did, was serve and show people what service is. And people just gathered, and people came to the Coptic Church, and people started filling the churches. It was amazing going to church and seeing different people in there at all times of day and night. Just if they're not praying, they're serving. If they're not serving, they're cooking. If they're not cooking, they're just playing, kids and having fun, and they're in church. So it was really a blessing to see that. We would go from place to place, and we would set up anywhere. I remember one of the places particularly, we didn't have any rooms. There was no rooms to set up in. The area, the people lived in shacks that were made out of whatever material is around, like a piece of wood or a piece of metal that was here and there. And then the bathrooms were outside in a small shed as well. And all we had, I remember a particular clinic, is all we had was a small table that me and Abuna Mina where we're at, and people would just bring their kids and their sick people to come for us to see. And it was a lot of a good mix of simple things, straightforward things, and we saw some sad stories. But before I get into some of those stories, just the teams wise, if you're thinking about going to help or going to a mission trip, don't think that we just are all doctors or we're all in the medical field. That trip was very, very diverse, as Dr. Saad said. We had medical or pre-medical students. We had even a high school student. We had engineers, and we had, of course, pharmacists, dentists in the medical field. We used everybody. Everybody had a job. Tuta was a...
She was in the pharmacy.
Yeah, Tuta as an engineer. She's not a pharmacist. I think with pharmacy, we had some of the high school people take the names of the people, arrange the clinic, and where would the patients go. We had some of the pre-medical students and the nursing students do the vitals, do the triaging to see who goes first, to see get the vitals. We had very basic equipment. We had a blood sugar machine, a hemoglobin for anemia machine, and everybody worked so well together, and it was such a great team, such a great experience. Allowed medical providers to do their job. We had a full team for dental that did extractions and did cleanings and did all kinds of work. We had OBGYN that were doing OBGYN actual exams. And me and Abuna Mina we usually shared the same little space, and we were seeing little kiddos each. We would see about 20 to 30 kids per clinic. And we would send them over to Christie to get treated. Some of the usual things we would see is the regular ear infections and sicknesses, upper respiratory infections. We would see a lot of intestinal parasites because of the non-clean water there. We would see anemia, malnutrition. We also saw some rarer things. I remember a young boy, I think he was, and at first, me and Abuna Mina were, of course, cautious. And then we did we checked his hemoglobin. We of course, with his height and his weight, we were very worried about a cancerous process. So we were able to have a difficult conversation with the parents, and we were able to direct him into the correct places and advise him that this must be addressed right away. I believe Abuna Mina in a trip before also had some very sick babies that had to go to the hospital. And other than that, as Christie said, overall, people were just extremely happy, they lived in conditions that, here in the United States or even in Egypt, we would consider unlivable. But they lived in these conditions that we're very, very happy to be in, very cheerful, very, very nice to the people around them, very appreciative of what they had. And the miracles that happened there, I believe that the miracles that happened there happened because of the people and how their heart was. For example, I remember another story of one of the girls that was in the orphanage. She was about 15 months of age when her parents left her and her twin newborn brothers in the house, and they just left the house because they couldn't take care of them. The young girl from 1 year and just a few months, just 15 months of age, was able to take care of her two newborn brothers, making the formula, feeding them, feeding herself. And if you don't think that's a miracle, I don't know what it is. It's a miracle that these kids were alive today and safe, and they got baptized actually in baptism we saw earlier. And God knows who these people will be in the future. God puts his hand in people's lives to save them. And I hope I live long enough where I'll be around in Bolivia and go back to see what these kids and what these people will do in the future in the name of God. So it was a very huge blessing, a lot of hard work, but what we gained from it was far, far more from what we gave. So if you're thinking about serving, if you're thinking about going to a mission trip like this, anybody can go, all walks of life, from teenagers to retired engineers like Mr. Adel, and from nursing students to engineers like Tuta. So it was a huge blessing that we got to go and experience this experience with this group.
Wow, this is again, you make me jealous more and more. Abuna, I'm allowed to, is it sinful to be jealous of these wonderful activities that one can do there?
Holy zeal, it's holy zeal.
Okay, okay. Now I'm relieved that I can be as jealous as much as I want. Huh? Okay, okay. Wow, since we spoke a lot about the orphanage that His Grace Bishop Yusuf established there, and let us watch just less than a minute of that orphanage where the caretaker speaks in Spanish, and Abuna Mina Habib translates for her, just to get a flavor of what the service is. We are not going to watch the orphanage itself. They don't allow that out for dignity and so on. But let us just get a flavor of the team, the team of angels, the Angelinos from Los Angeles, who went there while they are listening to the lady who is supervising or serving the orphanage. And then we'll watch another video quickly that gives some background about the environment. And when we come back, we will follow up with Mr. Adel Hanna and Mr. Fawzy Girgis. Thank you.
Silencio.
Okay. Muy buenas tardes. Primero quiero agradecer a todos por su visita y a la Abuna por visitarnos nuevamente.
مساء الخير عليكم جميعا، شكرا لزيارتكم الجميلة وشكرا لحضراتكم وجودكم في وسطينا ولزيارة أبونا مينا مرة تانية هنا في وسطينا.
Como pueden ver, nuestro hogar es pequeño.
زي ما حضراتكم شايفين إنه المكان هنا يبدو صغير ولكن
pero nuestro corazón es grande.
بس قلبنا كبير بيستعمل حبايب.
Así que muchas gracias a todos y a nombre de los niños también muchas gracias. Yo sé que de alguna otra forma ustedes siempre nos apoyan.
باسم الأطفال طبعا بنشكركم على وجودكم في وسطينا وعلى محبتكم الكبيرة.
Como pueden ver, por el momento ahorita tenemos 5 niños el día de hoy, acaba de irse hace una hora Valeria.
المكان هنا كان فيه لحد ساعة واحدة بس كان فيه 6 أطفال، لكن فيه طفلة خرجت دلوقتي مع أسرة جديدة، فاللي موجود دلوقتي 5 أطفال.
Bueno, ese es nuestro objetivo, ¿no? Cuidar de los niños, quererlos, protegerlos y amarlos hasta el momento en que ellos salgan con una familia.
ده دورنا إن احنا ناخد بالنا من الأولاد وإن احنا نحتضنهم وناخد بالنا من احتياجاتهم طول ما هم موجودين معانا لحد ما تيجي أسرة وتحتضن الطفل.
عايزين
مبسوط من لعب الأطفال؟ العب بقى.
مستنيين لما الشوكولاتة تخش.
Ahorita nuestro niño más grande es Bismarck, que tiene 4 años y 8 meses.
الطفل الأكبر دلوقتي هو بسمارك، هو عنده 4 سنين و6 شهور.
هو سعيد بالحظ.
Nuestro hogar, bueno, en Bolivia, en Santa Cruz específicamente, los hogares se dividen por edad. Y el nuestro es hasta los 5 años.
الأورفانج او الاماكن المخصصه لرعايه الاطفال هنا في بوليفيا وسانتا كروز خصيصا بتبقى بتتقسم لاعمار معينه. احنا المكان بتاعنا هنا مخصص لعمر 5 سنين فقط.
Bueno, durante el tiempo en que nosotros estamos trabajando aquí, que ya son 6 años que va a cumplir nuestro hogar.
احنا شغالين هنا واخدين بركه خدمه المكان ده لمده 6 سنين لحد دلوقتي من بدايه لما مين على الرحله الجميله دي.
نشكرك على يعني انت
الجدر ده agradecemos gracias a usted que que venimos aquí para visitar Girgis.
احنا في كاليفورنيا في يونايتد ستيتس. تملي لما بنتكلم على بوليفيا ورحله بوليفيا من اخر مره، اول حاجه بنتكلم عليها المكان بتاعكم هنا بتاع الاطفال. ونشكر فيه طريقه غريبه يعني.
En California, cuando volvemos otra vez allá, estamos hablando sobre el servicio de Bolivia. Decimos que el lugar bonito en Bolivia es el lugar del orfanato, la casa de los niños. Decimos que tenemos que ir otra vez, que es muy lindo.
Even the lights on.
Oh, hello! This is Thomas.
Now that we have seen and got a lot of flavor of life in Bolivia, I would like to ask Mr. Adel Hanna to give us his personal impression. What motivated him to go to on this mission trip, what his experience is, and did he get what he wanted to see there, or a little more or less? Please, Mr. Adel Hanna.
Sure. What happened is that Youstine, my daughter, went with the first trip to Bolivia in December on Christmas of 2021. And as soon as she came back, she was touched. And she kept telling me about stories, about what she saw and the kids and the people. And she told me, next time I'm going, you're going with me. Without me thinking, I for sure, yes, service for the church, I'll go. When I went to Bolivia, I understood what her point, because first of all, people so friendly, like the language barrier wasn't there. As soon as they see you, it's like they know you for years. So they run, especially the kids, they run, they hug you, and they're so welcoming. After that, when we start the service and we start to go around just to distribute like some like family needs for the people in their homes, and I saw the way that they live. Honestly, they have nothing, but they're always meet us with a smile. They're happy. They're like, I never seen such a blessing that people have nothing and they're so happy with the nothing that they have. Anything you give them, it's like you give them the world. That's for the adult. And also the kids are just, if you give someone like a small candy, like a bonbon or something, it's like you give him a very expensive something. That's the people who have nothing, and when you meet them, just they appreciate everything you do to them, and they're always happy with a smile, which is, it make me ask myself or everyone else, why we live in the stress, even though that we have almost everything we need. With the blessing of God, just whatever we need, it's in our hand. We can grab it anytime. Those guys have nothing, and they're blessed and they're happy, and they don't have the stress that we see. So that really motivated me just to talk to Abuna Mina, and as I told Abuna before, I felt like the first church really blessing it just to go on those mission trip to Bolivia or St. Kitts, and just the service of just seeing those people, it's really touched the heart. And I'm looking forward for the next mission trip, wherever God willing take me. So I'm ready to go wherever.
Thank you, Adel, for this coverage of what you did there, and also at St. Kitts. And we hope to dedicate another episode for St. Kitts mission. And now we go to Mr. Fawzy Girgis, who was a videographer and photographer of the mission. And let me give an analogy here. St. Luke, in my opinion, or I hope I'm right, was the photographer of the Apostle Paul and others in their Book of Acts. When he wrote the Book of Acts, he was describing the trips of the apostles in the beginning, and then the rest of the Book of Acts was the stories of St. Paul's mission. So actually, it's very important that we tell the world in video and in photographs and through Logos TV and other channels about the evangelical mission or efforts of our fellow Christians around the world. So, Mr. Fawzy Girgis, what motivated you to go, and what was your observation there, and would you go again?
Actually, when Youstine, Christine, and some other people came to our church, and they started talking about Bolivia, since this time I decided, okay, when I'm going to go to Bolivia? Yeah. Really, I'm anxious to go to see Bolivia. And when Abuna announced, okay, we need some like medical doctor to go to Bolivia, I asked Abuna, can I go with them? He said, sure, you can go, come with us. And since this time, okay, I said, Abuna, okay, go ahead, write my name. I am one from the group. And when I went to Bolivia, I took my video camera and my camera, and every single day I document like every step we went to Bolivia. And one from these days, we went to see the orphanage people, and I was behind the camera, and I see all the kids and everyone from our group carry one from the kids happy and smiling, and the kids like very happy, and I didn't see like kids happy since this time. And the lady from like the teacher or the serve these kids, she's talking in a Spanish language, and Abuna Mina Habib started to translate to us. She said like, we have like 6 kids in this orphanage, and one from Bolivian people came this morning, adopt one from the kids, and now we have 5 kids in the orphanage. And she's like talking about the orphanage over there, how she served this orphanage, and how she's like happy, and Abuna happy. And like I see something come to my heart about all these kids. And I wish to go back to Bolivia again, serve these people. Thank you so much.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, because you gave us an opportunity to live with the group in Bolivia through your videos. And I'm sure you were doing other things over there, helping the team. It's one team serving in varieties of ways. It's like the mission of St. Paul, as St. Luke describes in the Book of Acts. There were a team, not just St. Paul alone, going from one city to another. So that all needs, as St. Paul says in the book, in the epistle to the Ephesians, that all needs around the world would kneel in the name of Jesus for the glory of God the Father. And so thank you. We now can watch a quick video just for 1 minute about some fun activities for the kids that your group did, and we'll see some clown, but there is also a spiritual message. Watch for it.
¿Quién fue que lo traicionó? ¿Lo traicionó? ¿Cómo se llamaba? Ahora le va. Ahorita le da. Vamos a darle otros stickers. Así que vamos a esperar.
Let's talk about. Okay, so what we should do with our heart.
Entonces, ¿qué vamos a hacer con nuestros corazones?
What should we do with that?
We're going to give it to God.
So what we're gonna do, we're gonna have our heart goes on the cross with Jesus.
Ahora lo que vamos a hacer, vamos a elevar nuestro corazón a la cruz que cada uno tiene en su mano.
بسم الله والابن والروح القدس الان واحد امين. في البدايه بحب اشكر نيافه الانبا سرابيون على محبته الكبيره وبعت لنا مجموعه بركه مع قدس ابونا مينا. برضه ابونا استاذ قعد معانا يومين رغم المده قصيره لكن كان مليانه بركه وهو سافر النهارده بالسلامه وبيوصل بالسلامه. وبنشكر كل الجروب اللي مع ابونا مينا. يعني مش هقول اسماء كل واحد باسمه. ربنا يبارككم ويعوضكم على محبتكم انك انتوا جايين وتخدموا الشعب المسيح هنا في بوليفيا. الكنيسه في بوليفيا محتاجه محبتكم ومساعدتكم ومساهمتكم في الكرازه. احنا محتاجين المساعده دي. مش سامحوني مش مساعده ماديه لكن معنويه ان احنا بنشوفكم وتيجوا تقعدوا في وسطنا تشوفوا الناس على طبيعتها عايشين ازاي ومحتاجين ايه. احنا بنستفاد وانتوا بتستفادوا. سامحوني بتستفادوا من الخدمه دي لكن بتشوفوا الناس هنا عايشه ازاي. هتشوفوا ناس بسطة جدا جدا بيوتها يعني عايشين على الكفاف لكن عايشين في حياه سلام وحياه فرح. وبنشكر نيافه الانبا يوسف طبعا اللي هو تملي بيبشر في كل حته وبيدعو الناس يجوا بوليفيا عشان يزورونا هنا وبيتعب لاجل شعبه هنا في بوليفيا. نتمنى كده ما تكونش يعني الزياره الاولى والاخيره ليكم لكن نتمنى الزيارات دي تتكرر. محتاجين الزياره على الاقل مره.
This has been wonderful, and before we conclude, I want to ask Youstine and Abuna for some concluding remarks. But we'll start with Youstine. Youstine, you have been to Bolivia twice. You are an engineer working in LA. Now we know what motivated you to go. The second question would be, when you come back each time, do you feel like you achieved what you went to there for in the first place? Please let us know.
Yeah, so I would say no. I feel like I was blessed with a lot more than what I thought I would achieve there. As Christie mentioned, I went with her and Abuna Mina and a few others in the December Christmas trip in 2021, and Abuna Mina, while we were there, said, you know, he's gonna go back in July, and Christie and I right away said we're coming, not knowing what was going on in our lives at that in July of 2022, and for me, the second time I went back, I was excited to share the experience with my dad, and then the people who had never been on a mission trip before, just to see their hearts get touched as much as mine did on my first experience. And Sayyidna is a huge blessing, and honestly, the love that he exerts to everybody, it's more than anyone can handle, and it was truly touching. I plan to go again very soon, I hope. But, you know, I do want to kind of discover other missions and areas that might need help as well. And speaking to Sayyidna, he did want to Sayyidina Amba Yusuf of Bolivia wanted to spread that mission and Christ's love in other areas. And so when I had asked him when we can come back to Bolivia, he had mentioned, this time I want to go to the Dominican Republic. And so that's what I'll be doing personally with DOME. DOME is the Department of Mission and Evangelism of the LA Diocese. And we are working with Abuna Mina and trying to get as many mission trips as we can possible, just so that people have an opportunity to go and serve. And I really encourage people to go. If you really want to see Christ's love and his work, I would really recommend going. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Abuna, we have what, the Dominican, we have Egypt, we have the Philippines, we have Kenya, we also have Bolivia this year, just this year planned. And so there's, I believe, so many opportunities in order to feel and see the blessing that we've all been talking about today. And like you said, Ankit, there was, I went as an engineer, but Christie had mentioned before, you learn on the spot as to whatever is needed. And I was a pharmacist on that last one, and I learned a lot, and I can't wait for more.
Wow, it's indeed there is a saying that the impossible just takes a little longer. Now we do the difficult, but the impossible takes a little longer. So 50 years ago, 25 years ago, if somebody told somebody will send a mission to Bolivia, oh, it's impossible, forget about it, focus on what you are doing, plus all the other negative talk. But now, after it has been a reality, after 8 churches have been built, after clergy that are about to become from the native people, becoming clergy, becoming leaders of their own community in the Coptic Church, the absorption of the local Bolivians, their absorption or embracing the Coptic way of worship, ritual, etc. It's an amazing. Otsabuna, what's your take? We would love to hear from you concluding remarks about this amazing missionary work in Bolivia.
Thank you, Dr. Saad. For me, honestly, it's very humbling just to be serving along such amazing servants. Like we've all heard from Youstine and Christie and Dr. Mina and Uncle Fawzy and Uncle Adel. It's very humbling to work with them and to see their heart and their love, and the fact that they just desire to go back and to do more. And it makes me feel like the work is never finished. And we really want to thank His Eminence Metropolitan Serapion really for his big vision. And his big vision is to make every person perfect in Christ, as St. Paul says. And this mission, this vision doesn't just end at the borders of the LA Diocese, the Coptic LA Diocese, but his vision extends to the world. And what he wants to do is to really leave a lasting legacy throughout the world. So the reason that we go once and then go twice and go 3 times and keep going is we want to keep building, and we want to leave a lasting legacy for the people there. So we're not about going once and feeling good about ourselves, oh, we did something and we come back, but we're about wanting to keep building there so that there's the growth there is exponential and people grow. One thing I want to leave with is, one thing that impressed me a lot, and we talk about a lot how impoverished the area is, and Puerto Bush is a place full of there's no road, it's all dirt. And Dr. Mina said, like, they build with whatever they have, pieces of wood, pieces of tin. I think there's one faucet and one toilet for the whole area. So it's very, very poor, and the people actually don't own the land, but they live on government land, and the government is probably going to kick them out, and they may have already kicked them out since we left. But in the midst of all this kind of like chaos and poverty, God doesn't leave his people without something. And what impressed me the most is while we were visiting there, they brought out a little girl, and she can't be older than 12, I think, but she played a violin. I don't know how she got a violin. I don't know how she practiced the violin, but she played the most beautiful violin music ever, and it was really heavenly. So in the midst of all this, there was a pearl of goodness that God had given them, and this gave us hope, like people who are visiting, that God hasn't forgotten his people and he lives it. So the beauty about the mission work is that it's kind of a synergy between man and God. We try a little bit, and maybe we do like 0.5%, but God gives the increase, and he blesses, and he gives hope, and he gives exponential growth. So I think what we're looking for is to go back. I feel like we're just beginning in terms of the mission service and expanding. And like Tuta said, we want to go different places, but we want to keep going to the same places over and over so we can leave a mark. But what we need is, first, your prayers. Second, your help in the service. So we will share with you the website for the LA Diocese Mission. And there you can learn about different trips that are going in 2023, and God willing, we'll keep planning more in subsequent years. But we need volunteers, we need laborers. The harvest is plenty and is ready, but we need reapers. So please consider joining us, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Abuna, dear Abuna Mina Ghebrial, priest of Christ the Redeemer Coptic Orthodox Church in Lakewood, California. Thank you, not in any particular order, just as a screen in front of me: Adel, Hanna, Youstine, Hanna, Mina, Hakim, and Christie, Bolous, and Fawzy, Girgis. Thank you so much for such a wonderful episode. I learned so much. An episode about from LA to Bolivia and the world. Jesus Christ from LA to Bolivia and the world. And may God bless your mission, so that, as St. Paul said, he planted and Apollo watered, but God gave the increase. And may God multiply the fruits of the seeds that you planted over there. And may God help all the workers in his field in Bolivia and around the world. Thank you so much. Our viewers, thank you for watching Logos TV. You were with Coptic Civilization Program, a special report from LA to Bolivia and the world. See you next episode of Coptic Civilization. I'm Saad, Michael Saad.